What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So today is indeed Wednesday, which means a new summit is now live here at Motorfest, and it's also going to be the Drift Performance. I would admit right now this is probably going to be one of the funnest summits I have done so far, like I'm not even kidding. On top of that, we also got a new playlist as well. I am going to be doing a guide on the entire, all of the challenges in it, and I'm also planning on doing a video on the new MX-5 there, which from the looks of that car look absolutely insane. But nonetheless, though, looking at this summit right now is going to be obviously a drift-focused summit, and I would say a lot of players are most likely going to have a great time in it. Now, for this summit, though, we are going to have 6 main events here. Now, 3 of them are going to be like drift races, and then the other 3 are going to be actual drift events. I would say right now from the main thing, one of the events is probably going to be a challenge, and that is going to be the event right here, which I would say is going to be interesting. The reason for that is going to be the course being on like a pretty tight road, and similar to all the recent summits, I am also doing all of the main events in first person mode, which was honestly insane. For this one though, I did end up picking the Nissan 370Z Z34. I did actually try out the Skyline GTR and the 370Z Nismo. Now, I wouldn't say either one of those cars are bad because, to be honest, they're both great. I just had a better time driving the regular Z34, and I would also recommend trying that car out on basically all of the events. Funnily enough, guys, I did end up running the Z34 on the 3 main drift events in the summit. I would definitely recommend trying this thing out. Now, one of the main reasons why I did like this car is because it's going to be extremely easy to handle. I will also have pro settings at the end of this video, which I would recommend trying out. I did notice, though, taking down the tire grip just a bit on this vehicle did help it. Now, if you are wondering, like, well, Blocked, what is one way I could try to get better at drifting, or, like, what is the biggest thing you can give me for advice? Which, for me, without a doubt in my mind, is going to be throttle control and running that car in manual, and also getting used to using that e-brake around certain corners, or, of course, like, spinning the car back and forth to keep it in a drift. I am definitely going to be going over this more in a future video. I'm also thinking about going over like throttle control and like drifting as a whole to of course get people better at this overall. Like it is definitely pretty challenging. I do want to mention by the way the other event over here, which is Drift Donut. I did end up running the Evolution X because you have to use a Mitsubishi. And last time I checked, a Nissan is not a Mitsubishi, but one of the best things I did notice about this summit is probably going to come down to the fact that you don't have to be perfect, and you also do not have to go after the highest score ever to of course get a decent score for the most part in this. Like I got over 150k on all 3 of these events, and I was definitely far from perfect, and in some areas I did mess up, but luckily I still got a pretty dang high score on them. Now the other 3 events in this are going to be actual drift races, so the first one up here is going to be a no restriction event, which I would say the number 1 vehicle is going to be the Ford Hoonicorn. That is going to be for good reasoning because this thing is absolutely insane. Now, one thing I do want to mention though is normally when you are doing a race, you obviously want to get around that corner as quickly as possible. So for many people, drifting might not be the best option there. I would say for all 3 of the main events in this summit, do not be afraid to drift. Even for the drift countersteer here in the Lancer Evolution, I was finding it pretty dang easy to go around the corners like drifting around them. In fact, going around them and trying to grip is probably not going to be the greatest option ever. I would definitely recommend guys trying to like hit that e-brake and maybe get around those turns just a bit faster because, well, the drift cars are going to accelerate so dang fast that you don't necessarily have to grip them, and I would say that's probably going to be one of the funnest things about them. Luckily, this event is going to be fairly short with a lot of tight corners, so I would recommend being slightly careful with the Lancer Evolution. Also, in first person mode, being on the right hand drive is kind of odd. I pretty much never use those vehicles in this game. And then for the final event though, here is going to be the Drift Apex, where you will have to use the Nissan Skyline GTR. Now, the GTR did take a bit of like a learning curve though, because I was trying to mess with this car in like regular base settings, which surprisingly enough would actually do pretty dang good, but I was like, you know what, let's go back in and maybe adjust this car a bit, and I got this thing to handle even better. Now, as I did mention earlier though, I would not be afraid to drift in any of these events. I actually found this car to be a bit quicker drifting around some of the main turns, and I would say that's probably going to be one of the biggest things to keep your score up. Overall, though, for the most part, many of these main events are going to be insanely fun. And then you most likely did notice all three of these skills down here being a slalom. Now, a lot of players are most likely going to use, a hypercar, like probably going to be an Alpha GP vehicle. I am going to be the oddball person running a drift car, which I did end up using the Lancer Evolution on every single one of these, and I was still getting around 150,000 points with it, which funnily enough, I was also not running the right settings on these either, and I was still managing to get 150,000 points. Now, a few things I did want to point out, by the way, guys, before we jump into this summit. Heading over to the driver here, I would recommend adding some of your points onto a few of these. So the first one, I guess you could say all of them are going to be in gameplay. Definitely add your points over to the hothead and slippery. It does honestly help a lot. And what's kind of funny though is I did end up doing two of the main events in the summit without either one of these being on 40, and I still managed to get a pretty dang high score on them. So even if you do not have the legend points, you don't necessarily need them. And then the final one here is going to be for skilled. Even though it does say 10%, it might not necessarily be fully active, but I would still say it's going to be helpful than not actually having it. Overall though, guys, if you have any questions at all, let me know in the comments below. Let's jump right into this.